Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to start off a new week. This week's theme is Unlikely Features, looking at songs that feature artists that you wouldn't expect to be collaborating with the bass artist. My voice is a bit lower today. We're just going to ignore it. Allergies, whatever. We're going to kick off the Unlikely Feature week with, well, something to me that's at least a bit more likely. We have Gojira featuring Townsend and Frederick Thordendal, all of them associated with metal and especially rhythmic metal, although Devin can get a bit more melodic at times. To me, this seems like something people would Meshuggah and Gojira just kind of go together in my mind. I don't know, this just isn't that unlikely for me. But let's hit it and see what they're bringing to the table today. Alright, so we have a 7/4 going on with shifting emphasis from even beats to odd beats, because the snare is consistent. The snare hits on every other beat, so when you shift from the 7 to the 1, it's going to be pushed from evens to odds. We have two different vocal styles coming out right here from Devin, right? So we started with the pedal tone riff, and then we hit some chords for the chorus, and now we got very atmospheric, very textural. So that's Frederick's soloing right there, right? We've also shifted to 4/4 somewhere along the way. I didn't pick up when that happens. Bringing this back. So this would have been the verse, right? Okay, we're in 4/4. It is just... it pushes real hard against that rhythm. Or against the groove, I should say. Drums are going wild. We have those harmonic slides on the guitar. Huh. So I know it's Gojira featuring Devin and Frederick. But I mean, this is just straight up a Gojira song. It doesn't sound to me like Devin or Frederick had much to add of their own style. Um, which is, that's fine. Sometimes when you get a featured artist, it's just more about having them on your work, um, and in your art than having them contribute. Sometimes they're going to bring their expertise. Sometimes they're going to play what you hand them and just do it in their style, right? And I think that's kind of what I get here. Devin brings his vocals. He gets the verses, and they're 100% Devin, but it's all his heavy. I don't know. It's almost serious. Um, and I don't. I mean, I haven't listened to a lot of Devin Townsend, but what I have heard finds a way to mix heavy, weighty, serious ideas with fun, and none of that fun is in here at all, which makes sense. It's a Gojira song at its heart. Gojira doesn't make fun music, not like Devin does. And so we get Devin's sonic style, but not his compositional style. And Frederick, I mean, we've listened to whatever that 40 something minute song of that he did with man, that drummer. I always get him confused. It's either Matt or Morgan. One of them's a pianist and one of them's a drummer, and they worked a lot together. And I think it was the drummer worked with Frederick on this. What was it? Special Defects is what the group was called, wasn't it? So I had a lot of time to spend at once with Frederick's guitaring and composition, And, likening it back to Meshuggah as well, and seeing how he writes Meshuggah ideas. The solo, or I suppose what we could call the solo, it doesn't really feel like a solo to me. It's a single riff. Um, it plays around with time in a way that feels very Meshuggah-y, but it doesn't really stand out on its own at all. It's sonically interesting, but musically it's just there, and we don't even stick around with it for very long. I don't even know if I could call it a guitar solo. I don't think I would, because it's a riff. And then we get to hear some of these harmonic slides that create a tension in our final moments of the track. And so I don't feel Devin or Frederick's fingerprints in this track very heavily, which I suppose isn't terrible. I think I might have just had the wrong idea going into it, but all three of them do different things really well. Devin brings a bit of a non serious side to his writing while keeping things serious. Frederick has a rhythmic mind that's wild, and I love the way that he plays around with timbre and guitar tone. And Gojira just makes some heavy music. I was really hoping all three of these pieces could come together and make something really interesting. And instead, we got a Gojira song that sometimes includes the sonic qualities of these other people. Um, so I think this is just a moment where I've come in with the wrong perceptions. I don't think I would have had as negative a reaction to an immediate reaction to it if I didn't know who these people were. And it really is because I know what they do well that I'm like, wow, this is a bit underwhelming compared to what I had in my mind that these three people would create. So I want to clarify right here. We're going to dive into some more objective stuff about the music, but I want to clarify right here that I don't think the song is bad, but I'm very underwhelmed by it because I came in with the wrong ideas, and I thought something else was going to happen. And my expectations were way off the mark of what they wanted to make and what their intentions were and what they delivered. So, speaking of objective ideas, what's going on in this song? We kick off the track with a nice 7/4. The snare is always on every other beat, though, so where we originally get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as soon as we start to go over this threshold, because we have an odd number of beats per bar, we get 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now our snare hits are on the front beat rather than the back beat. They're on our odd numbers rather than the even ones. The guitars don't shift, though. They have a 7 beat idea. And so when they hit the 1, they start over. So now we're emphasizing different elements of the guitar riff than we were the first time around. Of course, once we get to the end of the second time, 7 would be an accent, and then we would go to 1, which is not accented, and 2 is, and now we're back on the backbeat. And so just keeping the snare rigid and not containing it to the 7 beats of the bar and saying the snare accents every other beat, regardless of what the band is doing, it creates this really sudden and jarring shift on the second bars of this entire section. It's our intro, and it is also our verse riff. And that's pretty much the meat of the whole idea there. We have a pedal tone as far as melody and harmony go. We have a pedal tone, and then they play a higher note, and they always come back down to a pedal tone. They change the higher note, they come back down to a pedal tone. That's the whole idea of the riff there. And so we have this weight, this centering, and then this distance, and then back to the center. All of it while playing around with the rhythmic cadence of it and disorienting the listener based on the rhythmic patterns I just explained. And then Devin comes in on top of it and lays down some layered vocals. And I really want to focus on these for a second because this is not a great recording or reproduction. There is no official release of this track, I don't think. I couldn't find any on an official Gojira page. And so I have no idea how close to the quality of the original this is supposed to be. Or I should say that this is. I will say it is highly compressed, and Devin's vocals get some of the characteristics get lost. And I think part of that is that there are so many layers going on and they're just difficult to hear, which is odd for both Devin and Gojira, both who typically have very high fidelity production, which is why I'm thinking that this is not the best quality audio that we could have had for this. However, it's the best quality I had available. Regardless, in almost every line that Devin sings throughout this first verse, there are at least two different vocal tracks going off, usually with different timbres or approaches or deliveries. Sometimes they're clean, sometimes they are compressed clean, sometimes it's that scream that he does, and he layers them differently to create these contrasting texture layers that I think is really neat. From, line to line, we could have vastly different textures to the delivery of the lyrics. And it adds a bit of characteristic and dynamic quality that, at least to me, the verse desperately needs, given that it's a two-bar phrase that we had already heard in the intro, and the verse goes on for quite some time as well. Some people get into just that minimalistic, heavy, groovy stuff. Not my cup of tea, so I was really happy that some element had a bit of diversity and contrast to it. So that was nice. Rhythmically, though, it's a lot of held out notes, which fits well for odd time signatures. It's a lot easier to work around that if you're only playing 2 notes per bar, sometimes 1 note per bar, rather than trying to fit in 5 or 6 and trying to smoothly take that rhythmic idea you have and put it into the next one while making the words themselves sound natural as well, because that's something you have to take into consideration when writing rhythmic ideas for your vocals. Isn't just, does it sound good as a rhythm? Does it sound good as a rhythm against the band? When you speak, is the inflection and enunciation going to be something that sounds natural, or are we going to end up emphasizing syllables that we don't typically, and is it going to sound a bit stilted because of that? So when you have something odd like this 7/4, and you have the band who is doing something very disjointed with the rhythmic aspect anyways, on top of the 7/4, it's usually a pretty clear bet for your vocals to just hold out some notes and minimize how many syllables you're saying per bar. And that's exactly what happened here, and it works out very well. It also provides a contrast where we have the constant moving and jumping around of the guitars. Like I said, they start on a home, jump up, start on a home, go up somewhere else, come back down to the home note. They're jumping around all over the place and they're rhythmically disorienting, so giving the vocals the exact opposite of that. A consistent tone, consistent pitch, consistent-ish pitch, and long held out notes rather than a moving rhythmic idea. It juxtaposes it, creates diversity, creates contrast, and it allows the vocals to just work better as a linguistic element of the track, um, divergent from its musical components. We go from here into the chorus, and I don't remember if the chorus was in 4/4 or not because we only heard it once. But to me, the big difference was not in Devin's vocals, but in the guitar work, which shifted primarily to chords. And we had a short little chord progression before going back into the verse. We do this again, and then we hit what I thought was going to be the start of a new section. Somebody else yelled, "Let's go." I think it was the Gojira singer. And then we got Frederick's guitaring. And this was interesting. We had a very unique tone to it, to the guitar, and we had this moving idea, and it was This was definitely in 4/4, and it was a one bar phrase we just heard over and over and over and over. And well, that was interesting. And then we went to our bridge. And I think this is really the big part for me that I thought was interesting because we took 4/4 and we pushed against it hard. We said, okay, we're going to lay down a bar of 4/4, but the second bar, we're not going to play anything near the downbeats or the offbeats. We're just going to accent really odd moments. And this actually does feel like Meshuggah style writing. Gojira does do stuff like this at times, but I don't think they've ever pushed against 4/4 as hard as Meshuggah does. And as I've been told, Meshuggah writes a lot of their music in 4/4, just polyrhythms and polymeters around it. And that's exactly what happens here, where we get these really interesting polyrhythmic ideas against the 4/4 in the second bar of each of these repetitions. And you may have noticed me nodding my head and having a bit of a disgusted, strained face as I was really trying to suss out where the 4/4 was and trying to work with my own natural metronome based on what they showcased in the first bar. Because in the second bar, like I said, nobody wants to play anything on the beat. And I'm really having to find that beat myself. And if you use my face and head as a visual metronome and you listen to what they're playing, it's such a disjointed section going on there, and it's just really cool, you know. I'm not usually a big fan for purely technical, mathy music like that, but as an exercise, I always find it fascinating. Just to listen to and be like, dang, thinking about the ways that they're dancing around the beat and the different syncopations that they're avoiding the beat with. And it's really interesting to dig into technically. And so I find it really fascinating and yeah, I found it really fascinating to listen to that in the moment and really kind of suss out what they were doing and trying to figure out how they were subverting the time signature and dancing around it. And then at the same time, you also had the drummer going off and doing these wild fills while also playing around with time the way that they were. And it was just a really great moment for technical showcasing what the band's capable of. And like I said, this is the one point of the song that I feel like Frederick, one of our featured artists, actually had some influence in the music writing as well. Now, I could be wrong on this. I don't have a lot of experience with Gojira, Devin, or Frederick, or Meshuggah. So I have a very limited palette that I'm pulling from, very limited database of information to say that this definitely doesn't feel like a Devin Townsend song or something like that. Um, But from what I've been exposed to these musicians and their affiliated groups, this feels like a Gojira song. And at this moment, we do kind of push into a Meshuggah angle. But, it's possible Gojira has done stuff like this as well in the past, which might line up a little bit better with my original reading of this, that our featured artist didn't really add much compositionally. But yeah, this was just a fascinating section. We get to hear Frederick's guitar line again, and it pulls us back to the verse, and we wrap the song up. This is a heavy track in almost every way, and especially when we get to the very end. I said we wrapped the track up. I think there was one final section of the song where they took a rhythmic idea similar to the verse, and just amplified the weight of it and the sound of it, the width of the notes, I think the pitch of the notes was even lower, and we didn't bounce up to a higher tone as often. They basically just found a way to make the song even heavier, and that's where we had the harmonic pick scrapes or pick slides that I'm pretty sure were Frederick being added to the typical Gojira writing here. And I think Devin was singing over top. So I think this was the only part where we actually had all three people performing at the same time, which I hadn't thought about prior, but it was like the verse was Devin featured, and then the bridge was Frederick's feature. But here at the end, I think we actually do bring them all together, which is nice. But yeah, the song is just really heavy. It is disorienting. And even when we bring in Frederick's ideas, I find them a bit alien. Not that they are strange or or I can't understand them. They just divert so far from the general sound of the song that we've heard up to that point, and they stand out exceptionally as a unique sonic quality to the song. It does make me wonder if Frederick played with a more traditional guitar tone elsewhere in the song and then flipped over to that for the bridge and the outro. I don't know. But it does seem weird just to utilize Frederick for that one moment. But like I said, he might have had some compositional ideas to toss in there to the 4/4 polyrhythmic section. But yeah, that's what I get out of this track. Is it's really heavy and disorienting, and they find differing ways to combine those or use them in isolation. Like the intro is heavy and disorienting. The chorus is just heavy. The bridge is primarily just disorienting, and the ending is primarily just heavy. I think that's about it that I want to say about it. So we're gonna hit some lyrics and see what's going on. And I found out some really interesting stuff. Most of these lyrics don't make much sense to me. Some of it is that the metaphor goes over my head. Others is that just the sentences themselves are oddly worded, and they don't seem to make much sense. Almost like some sort of word salad. Um, it says the walk and wicked of all going to the wall. I can kind of make sense of that, but it's so strange. Um, so then I found out that it's actually an EP, and this is the only surviving song from a failed hard drive. And that's why it's not. That's why I can't find it in any official version. And that's why I had to use this low quality audio version on YouTube. But also, because there isn't any high quality version of it, and because there doesn't seem to be any officially released lyrics, and there's no booklet or insert where the lyrics would be placed, liner notes, everything is done by ear, and when you're trying to figure out the lyrics by ear in a low quality audio, you're going to get a lot of stuff that sounds wrong, which is something that's acknowledged in the comment section of the Genius page for this. So I'm not going to say all these lyrics are wrong, but some of them just, like I said, they're worded very strangely in a way that doesn't make much sense to me, or sometimes no sense at all. Um, but I had to laugh because the second verse, Devin Townsend said, so my head is on fire, can't stand the pressure, I've got to run away, my head is exploding, come back to me, reason, as I fade away. And over the last 2 days, I watched the two Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movies, and that is a person whose head is on fire, and especially in the second one, they can't stand the pressure of having a demon in their body, and they do run away. That's the whole plot of the first movie. I couldn't help but just hear Ghost Rider singing this stuff, which is ridiculous when I think about it. It gives me a good laugh. Um, but the only thing that I think really makes much sense to me is a couple of ideas here about operators being passed out, losing control, and so we have like tragedy ahead of us. We have people taking our bread and leaving us with no respect. Which would once again be the rulers, which the operators would be the people who control the boat, so to speak. And it's about how the many's lives are being destroyed and wiped out by the few in power. That's what I get out of it. And I'm pulling that from like a whole 4 lines out of here, so I'm not even going to say that that's accurate. Um, as for tying that back to the music, I got nothing. The music's just heavy and disorienting, and maybe being in a wreck on a boat in the sea is a disorienting experience. I feel like I'm grasping at straws there, though. So if anybody has any insight into this, maybe you happen to know of some more definitive lyrics, or you have something that's a better quality, listen for me. You have your own perspective on things, let me know in the comments. But for right now, these are just my thoughts on Gojira-Of Blood and Salt. Above the comment section is a description box, and in there you'll find a link for Linktree. It'll take you here. You can find ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, a link to my music, and so much more. Above that, if you could like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. We do have a Haken reaction that just dropped if you're watching this live. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll continue on with this week's theme of unlikely features and check out another special selection. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.